All right, junior lab rats, thanks for bearing with me again through all of this. I'm going to record this, or I am recording this on Thursday afternoon because I don't have any idea what my mouth situation will be like after tomorrow morning. So here we go. We're going to roll through this as quickly as possible. So you will turn in your homework as instructed in your assignment. And now we're moving on to fish, amphibians, and reptiles, lower chordates, the slippery, slimy, and scaly. So let's talk about phylum Chordata and subphylum Vertebrata. Any vertebrate classified under subphylum Vertebrata is an animal with a backbone, and this group consists of several broad classes, including fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Now, all vertebrates are chordates, but not all chordates are vertebrates. To be a vertebrate, you must possess a bony spinal column, a backbone. But to be a chordate, you just have to possess a notochord. And we will go over what that means, okay? The word vertebrate refers to the bony vertebral column. All classes of vertebrate have developed brains, internal skeletons, or endoskeletons, to which muscles can attach, two eyes, closed circulatory systems, and muscular mouths. At some point during their development, all chordates possess the following: a notochord, a dorsal hollow nerve cord, an endostyle or a thyroid, pharyngeal slits, and a postanal tail. Chordates get their name from the characteristic notochord, which plays a significant role in chordate structure and movement. So you are a chordate. So do you have all those things? So let's talk about a notochord. This is the defining structure of chordates. It has essential roles in vertebrate development. It serves as a source of midline signals that pattern surrounding tissues and a major skeletal element of developing embryo. So where's your notochord? Well, by the time you have developed into an adult, all that will remain of your notochord are your intervertebral discs that you see in between each of the vertebrae in your spinal column. It was a much more prevalent and prominent, sorry, not prevalent, but prominent structure during your embryological development. Get rid of that. So, how about a dorsal hollow nerve cord? So this is a hollow bundle of nerve fibers that traverse dorsally and on the longitudinal axis of chordates. That means head to toe or head to tail. Dorsally means along the back, so along your back from your head to your tail, right? At some stage of their life, and it runs above the notochord and the gut. As an embryonic feature, it is unique to chordates in invertebrates. This embryonic structure is known as the dorsal nerve cord, and it transforms into the brain and spinal cord. So your dorsal nerve cord or dorsal hollow nerve cord has developed into your brain and spinal cord, so it is essentially your central nervous system. So how about an endostyle or a thyroid? An anatomical feature in an invertebrate chordate and larval lamprey, an organ which assists chordates in filter feeding, has been transformed through evolutionary time into a thyroid in all other vertebrates. So in some lower vertebrates, it's going to be there for the purpose of filter feeding. But in more higher chordates, in higher vertebrates, it's going to be your thyroid gland. All right, so your thyroid, got it? Now, how about pharyngeal slits? Let me describe these to you. These are openings in the pharynx, that's the throat, that aid aquatic organisms in filtering the food from water. In bony fishes, they develop into gill arches, and in terrestrial organisms, they develop into the jaw and inner ear. So you had gills and they developed into your jaw and ear? Yes. When you were an embryo, you had these pharyngeal slits right here, and you can see over time how those develop into the bones of your inner ear and some of your structures in your very kind of upper throat area, upper pharynx. So how about a postanal tail? A muscular region of the body that extends posterior to the anus. The tail may aid in locomotion and balance. All right, but you don't have a tail, do you? But you did have a tail. When you were an embryo, you had a very obvious tail, and it has since receded, and now all that's left is that little coccyx bone or tailbone. So we'll talk about endotherms and ectotherms. We need to define these terms first before we go through all of our different types of organisms. So endotherms are what you may have previously thought of as warm-blooded organisms, but this is a better term, so we'll use the term endotherm. Endo meaning interior, inside, therm meaning temperature. These are organisms that can maintain their temperature internally. Ectotherms you may have previously thought of as cold-blooded organisms. These are organisms whose internal temperature is affected by their external environment, ectotherm, external temperature. So let's see, where would they go? A fish is an ectotherm. A sea lion is an endotherm. An iguana is an ectotherm. A bird is an endotherm, and the salamander, he's going to be an ectotherm. Endotherms can alter metabolic heat production to maintain body temperature. You can have vasoconstriction, which is the shrinking, or vasodilation, which is the expansion of blood vessels to the skin. They can alter an organism's exchange of heat with the environment. We call this a countercurrent heat exchanger when it's arrangement of blood vessels in which heat flows from warmer to cooler blood, usually, excuse me, reducing heat loss. So this is done, this can be done in multiple ways. So some animals have insulation, such as blubber or fur, and others have evaporative mechanisms, such as sweating and panting, in order to maintain body temperature regulation. So now we'll talk about fish. So our defining characteristics of fish are that they are aquatic, ectothermic vertebrates. Now we know what all those words mean, right? Their body is divisible into a head, trunk, and tail. They have a spindle-shaped body, which means it is fusiform, kind of like a blimp. It has a wider middle and tapered at the ends. Their body is covered in scales. They respire through their gills. On their head, they have a pair of nostrils that are present, and their internal nostrils are absent. On the head, there is a pair of eyes present. They possess a swim bladder, which is a specialized organ filled with air that helps ensure that the fish maintains a stable buoyancy in the water. And they have fins for movement in the water. And here are our main types of fishes. We have agnathans, chondrichthyes, and osteichthyes. I love agnathans. These guys are so weird. These are organisms that lack jaws. We call these jawless fish. And because they have no jaws, they don't have any bones either. They're cartilaginous. They have paired fins, and they can often be absent. Sometimes they have no fins at all. Early species had heavy bony scale plates on their skin, but they're not present in any of the living species. In most cases, their skeleton is cartilaginous, their embryonic notochord persists as an adult, and they have 7 or more paired gill pouches that are present. Let me stop the dog from going after the spot. Sorry, my dog's trying to chase the mailman. I don't want him to bark like crazy. Okay, thank you. I had to scoop him up. And their digestive system lacks a stomach. So these are agnathans, lampreys, and hagfish. Look at those dudes. They look alien, right? Really cool. All right, now chondrichthyes, we've discussed these. These are our big think about when you think about the exception between chordates and vertebrates, always think of chondrichthyes. Sharks, skates, and rays. They have a cartilaginous endoskeleton. Again, inside skeleton, cartilaginous. Ventrally located mouth, which means it's on the front end of their body. Their notochord is present throughout their life, and also means it's on the front, but it means it's like on the bottom of their body. It's not on the top of their body. Their mouth is underneath. Gills are not covered by operculum, and they don't have an air bladder. So these are sharks, skates, and rays. Then we have osteichthyes, which are bony fish. They have a skeleton made of bone. They have jaws made of bone. Here's the thing. Chondrichthyes have a jaw made of bone, but a skeleton made of cartilage. Agnathans have no jaws and a body made of cartilage. And then osteichthyes have bony jaws and bony skeletons. So they have scales covering their body, paired fins, 1 pair of gill openings, jaws, paired nostrils, and some examples would be betta fish and pufferfish. So now let's talk about amphibians. Our main characteristics of amphibians are that they are vertebrates. Their skin is smooth and slimy. They breathe through their skin as well as lungs in some cases. They are ectotherms, which means they can't produce their own body heat, right? They have a complex life cycle, larval and adult stages. Many species of amphibians vocalize. One example is the chorus frog. If you live around here, you've heard the green tree frogs every summer. Some species fertilize eggs internally and others externally, and they have an interesting circulatory system. It is a closed system, but it is a 3-chambered heart with 2 atria and 1 ventricle. You'll see that by the time we get to mammals and whatnot, we are dealing with a 4-chambered heart. And then they have a life cycle that goes through many stages, which I'm sure you guys have known for many, many years. This is old school for you, right? So our main orders of amphibians are going to be Caudata, Anura, and Apoda. So Caudata are salamanders and newts. These are tetrapods. That means they have 4 limbs, 4 feet, tetrapod, that facilitate movement about on land, and the limbs are evolved from pectoral and pelvic fins of fish, their fish ancestors. Their skin is soft, thin, and glandular. They are ectothermic. They have both gill and lung breathers, usually gills in the larval stage, replaced by lungs in the adult. They do cutaneous respiration, so breathe through their skin. And they have a 3-chambered heart with 2 atria, 1 ventricle. So these are our little guys, our salamanders and our newts. And then we go on to Anura. These are our frogs, our tetrapods with 4 limbs, usually of unequal size, with the hind limbs elongated and modified for jumping. Their head and trunk are fused. There really isn't a neck on a frog, if you think about it, right? Their tail in the larval form is lost as an adult. Their vocalizations are restricted usually to the male for courtship, establishing territories, and it may be resonated within a vocal pouch. If you've ever seen a frog with that big, almost like balloon structure under its chin, that's a vocal pouch for helping resonate noise. And they have external fertilization where eggs and sperm are shed directly into the water. Now, apoda, Caecilians. Caecilians are cool. This name means no legs. It's a worm-like animal. They are subterranean diggers, so they live in the ground. They are restricted to the tropics and subtropics, so you're not likely to find them here. Their eyes can be covered by skin or even bone. They have a tentacle of head that may serve as a on their head, sorry, that may serve as a chemosensory organ. That means it can sense chemical changes, and it can help them detect prey underground. They have vivipary, which means they can give birth to live young, 30 to 60% of their female body size when they're born, so pretty big babies. And the initial growth of a fetus is supported by a yolk sac. Embryos feed on what they call uterine milk secreted from an epithelial wall of an oviduct. So basically, these guys are a little different in how they reproduce, and they have no legs and they're funky looking. They're really kind of cool though. So now let's talk reptiles. So our defining characteristics of reptiles is that they are vertebrates. Their bodies are completely covered in scales. They are ectotherms. They produce shelled eggs or bear live young. They can do both. All species, fertilize eggs internally. Also, their eggs, when they do make eggs, are leathery, not hard, right? All species of reptiles have at least 1 lung. And let's see, our main categories are going to be squamata, which are lizards and snakes, testudines, which are turtles, terrapins, and tortoises, Rhynchodelphia, I always get that wrong. Rhynchocephalia. I have to do it slowly. Tuataras. Remember tuatara. You really only need to remember tuatara. Crocodilia, which are our crocodiles, alligators, caimans, and gavials. So our squamata, snakes and lizards. These are uniquely jointed and highly mobile skulls. Their skulls are jointed. When you think about it, like snakes that can open their jaws up entirely, right? They are ectotherms. They have few dermal glands, dry skin that has to be periodically shed. They still have a 3-chambered heart like our amphibian friends do. Their young do not go through a larval stage. They have internal fertilization, which means they have to mate, right? They lay eggs or produce live young. And lizards have external ears, which is sort of like a tympanic membrane like you might see on a frog. Our testudines, terrapins and tortoises, are ectotherms. They possess a bony dorsal carapace and a ventral plastron. The carapace is the rounded part of the shell. The plastron is the flat part on the bottom that drags along the ground. They have limb girdles located inside their ribs. They lack teeth. They have internal fertilization, and they lay shelled amniotic eggs. Now, if you see a testudine walking around like this guy is a tortoise. If you see one swimming in the ocean, this guy is a turtle. You could also be a terrapin if you see him on the land. There are some turtles that are going to be a little more in and out of the water, but in general, your land-dwelling critters are terrapins and tortoises, and your aquatic ones are your turtles. So your tuataras, these guys are super cool. They're ectotherms. They lack external ears. Males have no reproductive organ, so reproduction occurs by a pair rubbing their cloacas together. Cloacas are like a combined organ for excretion and reproduction, like birds have cloacas. And so it's kind of not surprising that a reptile, because birds are basically an evolved reptile, it's not surprising that they would also have cloacas. So the females can store their sperm for 10 to 12 months before laying 1 to 19 white soft-shelled eggs in nesting burrows. Their eggs incubate in the covered burrow for 12 to 15 months before hatching. This is a long life cycle here for just reproducing one time, possibly the longest incubation period of any reptile. Now, here's the crazy thing, one of the crazy things. They have a third eye. On top of their head, this eye has a retina, a lens, and nerve endings, yet it's not used for seeing. It's visible under young tuatara's skin, but becomes covered with scales and pigment a few months later, making it harder to see. But what it does is it's sensitive to light, so it helps them judge the time of day or season. At least that's what they think that third eye is for. Now, our crocodilia are ectotherms. They're osteoderms, osteoderm, bony skin, which means they have bony armored plates. They hold their heads horizontally, and they have binocular vision with their eyes on top, which tells you most of them are predators. They have a muscular tail. You ever eaten gator tail? They have front feet with 5 toes and rear feet with 4 toes that are webbed for swimming. They have valvular nostrils that they can open and close to keep water out. They fertilize internally, so they mate, and they lay shelled amniotic eggs. So here is our funky little tuatara buddy.
I was watching a Clint's Reptiles video on YouTube. If you don't know who that is, he's an amazing biologist who focuses on herpetology, the study of reptiles and amphibians. I watch him because as a reptile keeper, I like to learn new things. And something I learned today is that there's another group of reptiles out there I knew nothing about. Everybody knows snakes, lizards, turtles, and even crocodilians, but what if I told you there's another group, the tuataras? Not long ago, I made a video about the Sheltopusik, the snake that's not a snake. In that video, I pointed out the key visible features that make it clear that the Sheltopusik was actually a lizard. You could tell just by the face it was not a snake. However, when you look at a tuatara, it's hard to argue that it is anything other than a lizard. Though, it's not. Reptiles stem from the class Reptilia. Two branches split off. Parareptilia, which are now all extinct, and Eureptilia. Under Eureptilia, you get the Sauria classification, which contains the most recent ancestors to modern reptiles. I'm about to mispronounce all of these names. Within Sauria, you get the Archosauriformes, aka crocodiles, birds, and various extinct dinosaurs. Yes, I said birds. Birds are in fact reptiles. Then you get to testudines, turtles, squamata, lizards and snakes. Then lastly, oh boy, I know I'm going to butcher this. Rhynchocephalia. Rhynchocephalia. Anyways, this group only has one remaining living member, the tuatara, which is not considered a lizard. So why the heck is it not a lizard? Well, when it was first classified in 1831 by John Edward Gray, he classified it as an agamid lizard, like a bearded dragon. In 1867, Albert Gunther said, "Wait a darn second, that's not an agamid, it got weird features. Let's give the thing its own classification." So they did, because science. Now, because science is not really a good enough answer, and I feel you guys would probably leave me some angry comments below if I just left the video at that, so here's why these animals are not considered lizards. Short answer, they're evolutionarily different. Long answer, body structure. Tuataras have cristalia, which are rib-like bones that only crocodilians also have. This was kind of the giveaway that tuataras were not modern lizards, are actually more closely related to crocodiles, which are way older on the evolutionary chain, despite having a very lizard-like form. There's many other traits the scientists found over time to further prove that they're not lizards. So now that we know that the tuatara is sadly on its own little island, let's talk about where the tuatara lives. Oh, that's actually on little islands. Well, more specifically, the various little islands around the North Island of New Zealand, with populations on the Brothers Islands below the northern island of New Zealand, between the North and the South Island of New Zealand as well. New Zealand. Now, typically, when I cover an interesting reptile on this channel, there's always something sad about it, like the fact that tuataras were almost completely extinct due to Polynesian rats. It's always the rats. However, New Zealand said "kaurate" and decided instead to wipe out the rats. Today, there are about 60,000 to 100,000 tuataras in the wild. They're a protected species, and there are various attempts to breed them and get their numbers even higher. They have been bred in captivity, although not common or easy, and they've also been found again in 2008 on the North Island's mainland, believed to be the first in 200 years. Obviously, New Zealand really loved the little lizard, not lizards, and they wish to protect them. They are the last of their kind, and hopefully they live on for centuries more to come. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, take care. How are you?
All right, so if you are ever wondering how to tell an alligator from a gavial, from a caiman, from a Nile crocodile, here is a little pictograph for you. So if you look at the sort of overhead silhouettes, you can see that the differences are most obvious with your gavial and your crocodile, where you have a very, whoop, why did I do that? Sorry, very narrow mouth here and a more V-shaped head here. But your caiman and alligator have similar overhead profiles till you look at them from the side view. This guy's got this big old eye and his cute little face. So you can see there are definitely differences, and they are easier to tell apart when you know what you're looking for. So now let's see about this taxonomical change.
Enjoy 24-hour access at most Planet Fitness clubs. Save $28 or more when you join for just $1 down.
Imagine if I told you everything you knew about dogs and cats was wrong because we decided that some animals that we'd been calling dogs were actually cats. If that happened, you'd probably have questions, right? Well, guess what? That just happened. This is a part of the dinosaur family tree. On the left is the family that contains the Brontosaurus, Velociraptor, and Tyrannosaurus, all over here in the Saurischia. Then here in the Ornithischia is the Stegosaurus and Torosaurus, aka Triceratops. Saurischia and Ornithischia aren't randomly assigned names. As humans found more and more of these ancient bones, we started putting them into groups. And just like my boy Chubb said, it's all in the hips. These animals have 3 bones in their hips, the ilium, ischium, and pubis. On Saurischians, they're arranged like this. This is called lizard-hipped. And in Ornithischians, they're like this, which is called bird-hipped. It's a big difference, and this is how paleontologists started categorizing these animals to trace their ancestry. It dates all the way back into the 1800s. Until now, in 2017, British scientists finally changed everything. They analyzed anatomical samples, and you know what? Their hips don't lie. All right, so here's what they're proposing. Ornithischians are not a separate group of dinosaur, but in fact, they're grouped with another one called theropods. They want to call this new group Ornithoscelida, a name that was made up in 1870 and then never used. And if that weren't crazy enough, this new paper alleges that the anatomy indicates the Saurischia are actually 2 groups. I know. Sauropodomorphs should then be in their own category, meaning Diplodocus and Brontosaurus might not even be dinosaurs. What? First you tell me the Triceratops isn't real, and now Brontosaurus might not even be a dinosaur? But that's not all. The analysis also says dinosaurs are older than we thought they were at 247 million years, and that they may have evolved in the northern hemisphere rather than the southern. There's obviously a lot going on here. The important thing to remember is your favorite dinosaurs aren't going anywhere, but the way we're thinking about how to organize them in complex charts is being completely rewritten. To do that, the researchers created a computerized model. They took 3 years visiting museums filled with dinosaurs all over the world. How do I get that job? They used the data available to calculate 457 different anatomical characteristics of many species of dino. There are over 1,000 known. And they looked for patterns. From there, they made a computer model to form the best tree of life based on the data. They plugged in the numbers over the years and then clicked go. In 5 minutes, it analyzed 32 billion different trees and then picked the best one. Done and done. The click heard round the Jurassic world didn't immediately change everything, though. They're just suggesting the tree be rewritten. 130 years of tradition isn't just going to be swept away overnight. Now, lots of nerds all over the world are going to debate dinosaur hips. Yeah, it's going to get lit. Now that it's generally accepted dinosaurs evolved into birds, paleontologists are trying to figure out where the first dinosaur evolved, and also how, hoping to reveal more about the history of life on our planet. We only know that dinosaurs existed because of the bones of a very few that died in very specific ways, allowing their bodies or tiny parts of them to be preserved. There will potentially be thousands of species that we just never find and could have existed completely without our knowledge, so we just have to base our understanding on these trees of life
on what is left. One of the researchers put it very humbly and also pretty well. Just because this is backed up by data, quote, doesn't mean it's right, just that it's the best we can do with the data we've got at the moment. I mean, if scientists were potentially wrong about something as fundamental as whether these dinosaurs were bird-like or lizard-like, what else might science have to revise in the future? Research more needed is. So are you curious about how dinosaurs evolved into birds?
Well, here's how. He's got another video when he knows.
Remember Jurassic Park? Those guys were so silly. They wanted to see dinosaurs. Just go outside. They're birds now. Hey Raptors, Trace here for D News. Dinosaurs are a constant fascination to humans all over the planet. 150 million years ago, birds were giant animals roaming free across the planet until 65 million years ago when that big asteroid hit, causing a massive extinction across the entirety of Earth. Obviously, our ancient mammalian ancestors were able to survive, as were many other animals, mostly by burrowing into the ground or hiding in the water to escape the initial heat, and then surviving on smaller prey during the ensuing years of cold. The big fellas like Diplodocus or Diplodocus would never have survived. They couldn't seek shelter and they needed far too much food. But according to research published in the journal Science, some dinosaurs did survive, the smaller ones. Scientists at the University of Adelaide analyzed the skeletal characteristics of 1,500 dinosaurs over 50 million years and found theropods, a carnivorous dinosaur family which included the Tyrannosaurus, got smaller and smaller over that time. In fact, they got smaller in 12 separate mutations, going from 163 kilos on average to the 0.8 kilo Archaeopteryx, the first bird. Because they kept getting smaller and because they ate meat rather than plant life, they were able to survive the asteroid strike and ensuing extinction. The reason meat eaters survived was because they didn't require as large a body as plant eaters. They have to digest all that cellulose. Less body means less to take care of, which means survival. Yay! Separate research also published in Science last month theorizes that all dinosaurs had feathers. Some were more primitive, like hairs or bristles, while others were soft and downy, like modern birds. They discovered this when they found a new dinosaur called Caeondramomus zabacalicus or something, which had feathers but couldn't fly. This, combined with other evidence, is enough to make a theory, but not a final determination on this stuff. Though, taken together, it's pretty easy to see that modern birds are probably just tiny dinosaurs. And the scientists were quoted in the Washington Post saying, without a doubt, that's the case. But why would these dinosaurs get smaller? What would be the purpose of that? Scientists say there would be a distinct advantage. Smaller carnivorous dinosaurs with feathers would be able to climb trees, glide, and maybe even fly, allowing them to hunt prey that differed from their larger carnivorous brethren, also helping them survive extinction. They just knew how to innovate, evolutionarily speaking, Discovery News writer Richard Farrell said. And if you take this to be true, as many paleontologists do today, then instead of being extinct, there are actually 10,000 species of dinosaur living and breathing on our planet still today, even more than there are mammals or reptiles. Maybe some of you had fried dinosaur for dinner last night, or went to fill the dinosaur feeder in your backyard, or perhaps you have a pet dinosaur in a cage in your house right now. All of those sound pretty freaking cool to me. What do you think? Are you on board with the dinosaur bird changeover? Are you going to start calling it KFD and eat dinosaur noodle soup when you're sick? Make your own jokes down in the...
All right, so I will show you your answers real quick, and you can pause to check them. Oh, sorry. There you go. Take a second to check those answers. Moving on. Take a second to check those answers. Okay, and we're good. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I appreciate it. I'm sorry for all the upheaval, but this has been difficult. All righty, I will see you guys again soon. Thanks.